Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, cheesebags. We've got a real treat of an analysis for you today. Every generation is given a voice, whether that be in music, art, film, or activism. For people my age, there's few who compare to the guy who embraced my generation's sense of nihilism and turned it into high art. Comedian, actor, and notorious prankster Eric Andre.
First question.
Or, as I like to call him, Bugs Bunny for millennials. And my celebrity crush. He doesn't need to know that, but he's not gonna see this anyway, so fuck it, punk rock. Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, Coke Francis. I'm a filmmaker, stand-up comedian, drag artist, and I'm here because I'm not a Democrat, I'm a nihilist. And soon you will be too. Notice anything different? I'm wearing my real hair today. The old-ass saying goes, if you're not wearing wigs, then you're not doing drag. Well, guess what? I spend a sacrilegious amount of money on my hair, my hairdresser is a good friend, and I will show it whenever the fuck I want. I'm living my late-night host fantasy, or rather, the fantasy. Is that my new catchphrase? Is this how catchphrases are born? On that note, let's talk about the greatest talk show host of all time. It all started, as most great things do, with an underemployed stand-up comedian. Eric Andre's career began in 2003, almost a whole decade before his most successful project took off. There's hope for me yet. He lived in New York City doing stand-up comedy, but his sense of humor didn't really lend itself to the traditional stand-up format. We'll get back to that later. He came up with the idea for the show while working a temp job.
I was like 22, 23 years old, and I was doing stand-up comedy at night. And I had a temp job, and I was miserable. And I just thought, how funny would it be if there was a talk show where the talk show host, that was his temp job, and he brought like apathy and indifference to a talk show host position.
Taking inspiration from Space Ghost Coast to Coast to Ali G Show, Jiminy Glick, and Tom Green, Eric set out to make the worst talk show of all time. A demented anti-talk show that would deconstruct and parody the late-night TV format. He filmed the pilot inside an abandoned Brooklyn bodega, then spent a year learning Final Cut so he could cut it all together. After shopping it around several networks, Adult Swim finally gave him the green light for $300 and a couple of Domino's coupons. He then saved up more money working as a caveman for live Geico events, moved to Los Angeles, and soon the Eric Andre Show was born.
What year is this?
The show opened with Eric destroying the entire set in every episode. Featured nonsensical celebrity couch interviews.
Hey, when you take a whiz, do you get a sense of Khalifa?
And his infamous man-on-the-street pranks, which ranged from dressing as a centaur on the New York City subway and accidentally dropping cakes on passengers, to handing out Klan hoods and swastikas at a Tea Party meeting, and getting chased through a Civil War reenactment dressed as a slave. He was occasionally arrested and still sustained several injuries from the show, and the majority of the budget went to legal fees and building new sets. And of course, this analysis wouldn't be complete without mentioning his co-host, the legendary Hannibal Buress. Hannibal served as the perfect foil for the show, playing the straight man that countered Eric's psychoticness, but also managed to be equally absurd. It juxtaposed extreme mania with extreme chillness. His departure during season 5 didn't ruin the show, but it did feel a little empty without him. He also provided us with one of the most iconic moments in the show's history.
Show sucks, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. You got any?
I know that was done in post, but it's so good. Years later, I still cry in every sense of the word when I watch that. The interviews were with mostly B through D-list celebrities, as well as some not quite impersonators of major celebrities. Occasionally, a celebrity guest would be in on the joke.
Warp speed, don't rainbow read me.
But most of the time, they had no idea what they were in for.
You son of a bitch!
In addition to the pranks, Eric would intentionally make his guests extremely physically uncomfortable, from cranking the heat to pumping nasty smells all throughout the studio.
Oh my god, the smell, dude.
It's bad.
This is really bad.
One of my favorite episodes of all time is when the featured guest is Jack McBrayer, who's basically psychologically tortured by Eric the entire time in the best way possible.
You're too intense, Jack. Come on.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I put you in the hot seat, brother.
It's like introducing your Mormon friend to Deadpool for the first time. So good. Though the show's normal airtime was 3 a.m. on Adult Swim, it developed a cult following, and Eric himself became more of a meme when his visits to the DNC and RNC went viral.
Let me in. Let me in.
Are you anti-abortion?
Our delegation is duly bound to cast 10 votes.
Because I'm Uncle Abortion.
Hillary, I'm gonna swear.
And he made history when he crashed an Alex Jones rally and introduced himself as a nihilist after they mistook him for someone on The Daily Show.
I'm not a Democrat either. I'm a nihilist. I want you to have sex with my wife.
You're not Martin Luther King. You're not. Hey, you're not.
His occasional crossovers into political comedy added a whole other layer to his shtick, and was a big middle finger to all the existing political comics with the whole I'm right, you're wrong mentality. It even went beyond the unbiased comedy of Matt Stone and Trey Parker, who I mentioned several times in my last video. Through absurdity, he managed to make nihilism seem like the most sensible option. I guess the best way to describe it is my own ultimate political philosophy. I just want to laugh at the stuff that I find funny. He's somewhat of an anti-Sacha Baron Cohen, even though the two are buddies and consider each other major influences. Sacha's interviews and stunts are intended to get people to unknowingly admit their bigotry, whereas Eric's antics have no greater social purpose. It's just really funny to mess with people. Even when he crashed a Tea Party meeting to hand out Klan hoods, clearly he was making a statement, but nobody was exposed per se. Just trolled. However, similar to Sacha's work, The Eric Andre Show does reveal certain aspects of the celebrities he interviews, particularly their sense of humor. Take his interview with Seth Rogen compared to his interview with Asa Akira and Pauly D.
Your dick is hanging out.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Ooh, XYZ. Examine your zipper. What's your cell phone number?
What's my cell phone number?
We'll just put it up at the bottom. Anybody has some comments, questions about.
I don't want to do that.
About.
Please don't do that.
Did you put GHB in this?
There's a little bit of GHB in all of them.
Are you sad? Was that your wife? Your girlfriend? Mistress? Sister?
Now I was born a woman.
Personally, I was surprised by Seth Rogen's reaction, and this was before he started selling weed for $75 a gram. It probably has more to do with his higher level of celebrity than Asa and Pauly. If that's the case, it just proves Eric's original point in the show's concept. When interviewed by an indifferent, apathetic talk show host, Seth Rogen's celebrity status is entirely meaningless. Of course, I don't think anything less of Seth, or anyone really, for reacting negatively. One of my favorite points in the show is the look in the guests' eyes at the exact moment they realize they need to fire their agent for booking this gig. And their interviews were some of the less crazy ones that occurred, especially compared to these.
I'm gonna go for the dude in the middle. Oh! I knew you were gonna shoot somebody! I knew it!
It's like 90 degrees.
What began as a parody of late-night talk shows transformed into something much greater. It eventually turned into a destruction and deconstruction of them, literally and figuratively. Hell, it even became a deconstruction of comedy itself, and this is probably the best example.
Words, 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 punchline. Words, 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 punchline.
You did it! You broke comedy down to its bare essential!
It's a literal breakdown of comedy to its most basic words, and his knack for deconstruction lends itself to that kind of postmodern parody, but not so much to his actual stand-up material. So with that, let's talk about his Netflix special, Legalize Everything. Eric is very open about his use of psychedelics, which were probably a major catalyst in creating the very concept of the Eric Andre show. Psychedelics don't alter the mind, they instead show what the mind is capable of, and introduce you to a new perspective of the world you might not have even known existed. The surrealism of the show is trippy enough, but also explores just how far one can go with an interpretation of something. He took inspiration from other works and allowed it to transform into something new, which was pretty much just postmodern everything. Post-Andy Kaufman anti-humor, post-Tim and Eric surrealism, and post-Tom Green absurdism. Mind-expanding drugs are probably responsible for his awareness of the meaninglessness of celebrity. Just take Jim Carrey's legendary interview after he spent a few months tripping on shrooms in the forest.
I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join.
They say they're celebrating icons inside.
Celebrating
Do you believe
icons,
in
boy,
icons?
that is just the absolute lowest aiming, possibility that we could come up with.
God bless you, sir, even though you don't believe in vaccines or whatever. God bless you. He was also open about his psychedelic use in Legalize Everything. I mean, just look at the title. But since he didn't really have an opportunity to show where the mind can go, he just tells us instead, which ends up being a bunch of one-time I did these drug stories, which are rarely entertaining. These stories make up the first half of the special and were actually somewhat difficult to get through.
Now, keep in mind, my mom is a 700-year-old Jew, okay? So I give her a little weed cookie, and then we start playing Scrabble, and then 20 or 30 minutes later, her eyes got all red, and she looked up at me, and she goes, "My mouth is dry." Is that part of the appeal?
That's it! That's all we get! I want to see what really happens when a 700-year-old Jew eats an edible for the first time. A lot of them start out fun and then they don't really go anywhere. Like there's one where he talks about taking too much Molly, and that's it. Relatable? Yes. Entertaining? Not really. Girl, we all been there. But there were some bright spots toward the end that showed what he's truly capable of once he started doing what he does best. Fucking with people and getting away with it.
Show of hands if you walked in on your parents having the sex. You just suppressed all this trauma. You've never processed it. Well, I got good news for you because your parents are actually here. Please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Stevenson. Come on out. His parents are here. He's gonna process all his trauma.
Of course, Eric is playing a character on the show and is the complete opposite in person. Homeboy even knows how to properly meditate. I actually do wonder if he learned how to meditate through practice and discipline, or if he just took enough acid to be able to reach that state of being and then access it whenever he needs it. In stand-up, he's his regular self, and on the show, he's a psychotic impersonation of himself. His normal self is lovely, but it's the character that allowed him to go crazy and do more with it. It's pretty much the same reason I'm in drag on this channel. He's just on a whole other level. Eric's sense of humor is sheer genius, but it doesn't necessarily translate to every form of comedy, and it doesn't have to. You wouldn't ask Sacha Baron Cohen to do a Netflix special, right? But that doesn't make their comedy any less great. So even though I wasn't a fan of this special, my respect for him hasn't even wavered slightly. In addition to his blessing of season 5 of the show when we needed it most during the pandemic, he also released the film Bad Trip on Netflix, a sort of cross between Borat, Sex Drive, and Jackass. It's hard to describe though. The pranks that he and co-star Tiffany Haddish pull are weaved into the actual plot of the film, but the pranks are done in front of real people, and their reactions are genuine and golden.
I love you.
You know what? Sometimes you just gotta.
Holy shit.
I'm from the street.
People from the street don't hang people from roofs.
Tiffany steals the whole goddamn show, and they somehow made her up to look like Method Man. Even though it doesn't quite capture the chaos that made his show so unique in the first place, it's still a great showcase of his talent for shocking first-time viewers and making longtime fans, such as ourselves, laugh our asses off at it. The best part of Bad Trip, like the show, is another element of anti-Sacha Baron Cohen comedy. Instead of bringing out the worst in people, sometimes he's able to bring out the best. Rather than exposing the ugliness of humanity, he's sometimes able to expose people's empathy when they react to his pranks. I guess the best example of this is from the latest season, where people fulfill a dying man's wish to have sprinkles on his ice cream.
Please, I need an ice cream. Here, pass me that ice cream. Thank you. Yeah, I could use some sprinkles.
Sprinkles? Can you put sprinkles on that?
Since most of us hold no hope for the future, I think we'll end on that extremely positive note. Thank you so much for watching. If you've never seen The Eric Andre Show before, please immediately close this tab and watch it, but not before dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Get your shit together. Until next time.